So today we're going to learn about a screw, and you're almost familiar with screws of this type, which are the sort used for building things. They're commonly used as fasteners. So how the screws of this type work is they've got an edge, a thread that wraps around a central rod of some kind, and usually the thread's quite sharp so that it can dig into whatever it's going into. And the reason it's good for fastening, of course, is once you've gone to all the effort of turning and turning and turning and turning, if you wanted to pull it out, it would be really hard because each of these little pieces of the thread will hold really, really tight into whatever it's been screwed into. So we can screw things into wood by turning them. Usually we pre-drill a hole to make it a little bit easier because the things we're screwing into are quite hard. One of the things you'll notice, which is interesting, is let's say we were screwing two things together. And what we might find is instead of the screw going in, it will seem like the screw stays still and the object comes up into whatever it is that we're screwing in. And that's because screws actually weren't originally invented as fasteners. Screws were originally invented actually to lift things, the same way that levers do. And we think that's not a common usage for them now. They're so used as fasteners. But in fact, this here is an example of a screw that can be used to lift water. It can be used to lift other things too. You sometimes see screws used to lift earth still, or to bore through things. So sometimes you'll hear them called augers, and they lift soil samples out, for example. Or if you want to put a post into something, you can screw the earth out. So it works the same sort of way. What we have here is essentially a channel through which the water can flow, and it gets lifted up into the air. So it scoops up some water and it starts moving up the pipe that we've got here, and eventually it reaches the top. Now our one's pretty homemade. Okay, our one's pretty homemade, but you can get professional ones that do a really good job of this, and you're going to make one of these yourself, or use some with different ratios of how tight the turns are or how thick the hose is, and they're pretty simple to make. So to make one of these, you start with your wooden rod of whatever thickness you happen to have. You start with your piping of whatever thickness you happen to have, and your two rubber bands to hold the ends. And I start by holding the piping over the end of the rod so that it just curves over the end, not too far over, not very far under, and I wrap my rubber band around it to hold it in place. Okay, so once I've done that, I might be like looking at that going, oh, that's not very useful. So I'll need to rearrange it as I start my coils of piping. So I want to hold it fairly tight while I'm putting the coils on, and I want them to be fairly even until I get to the end where I set it up like that again. And I just stick my rubber band on this end to hold it in place. You can use nails as well to hold it in place, and in fact some of the ones that you'll see that have been pre-made do have nails on them to help hold the end of the pipe into place, but this works fine. And this is your screw that's going to lift your water up.